Have you ever raised concerns that someone might lack capacity, only to be told, well, we must assume they have capacity, so there's nothing I can do? If that sounds familiar, then you're not alone. And today I want to talk about why that response is often a misunderstanding of the Mental Capacity Act, and how the presumption of capacity can sometimes be used unintentionally as an excuse for inaction. So what is the first principle? Well, the first principle of the Mental Capacity Act 2005 tells us this: a person must be assumed to have capacity unless it's established that they lack it. Now, that principle is fundamental. It exists to protect autonomy, to stop people being written off before they've even been listened to. I mean, imagine going to see your GP and before you've even said anything, you're told you lack capacity. Oh, if that was me, I'd be so annoyed. And I suspect you would be too. And so if that applies to you and me, then surely it applies to everyone. And that writing off people before they've been given a chance is exactly what this principle is designed to present. But, and this is crucial, it's not meant to stop us from assessing capacity when there's a genuine concern. So, let's have a look at how this principle gets misused. Well, in practice, the presumption of capacity sometimes gets morphed into, oh, we don't need to assess. Let me give you an example. So, I once visited an elderly gentleman in a care home. He had a diagnosis of dementia. He could retain new information for, I don't know, not even 10 minutes. And he required support with all his aspects of daily living. Yet, there were no recorded mental capacity assessments. Now, when I asked why, the response was simple. It was that, well, we have to assume he has capacity. See, and this is where that first principle gets misinterpreted. The presumption of capacity is not a reason to ignore red flags. It's a starting point. It's not the end of the discussion. So what does the law actually say? Well, the courts are very, very clear on this. In the ruling of the Royal Bank of Scotland plc versus AB, the judge made it clear that where there's a good cause for concern, the presumption of capacity cannot be relied upon to avoid responsibility. Now, in that particular case, the tribunal was criticised for failing to order a capacity assessment despite clear warning signs. Now, similarly, the House of Lords Post-Representative Scrutiny Report of the MCA warned of a worrying tendency for authorities to invoke the presumption of capacity as a reason to do nothing, and particularly in cases involving self-neglect. So you see, the message from both the courts and Parliament is consistent that this presumption of capacity is not absolute. So, presumption then does not mean passivity. If there is something that gives you a niggle or a concern about someone's capacity, we have to act. Now, this niggle might be due to, say, evidence of confusion or serious memory impairment. It might be, I don't know, self-neglect or, decisions with significant consequences which you don't think the other person understands. Now, in these cases, then, we are expected to investigate further. Look, respecting autonomy does not mean turning a blind eye. In fact, failing to assess when capacity is genuinely in doubt can itself be a failure to protect a person's rights. Now, the first principle protects people who have capacity, not systems that want to avoid responsibility. And the real challenge here, I suppose, is how do we find that balance, right? How do we respect autonomy, avoid paternalism, but still act when there is a genuine concern? I mean, the answer is that we don't hide behind this presumption. Right? It's about using it properly as a starting point for a careful, proportionate assessment when needed. Now, it's nearly 20 years since the Mental Capacity Act came into force in the UK, and unfortunately its principles are still sometimes misunderstood. The presumption of capacity remains fundamental, but it is not a free pass to do nothing. As professionals, we should always be asking ourselves, are we truly respecting capacity? Or are we just using this first principle to avoid taking responsibility? So I hope that's helped explain why we can't hide behind this first principle. If you found it helpful, if you found it useful, then please do like, subscribe and share. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks very much.